Yeah, here we go. Oh, this is a really good one.
Hello, I'm Bob Hartzler, Extension Weed Scientist at Iowa State University. We're in the agronomy teaching greenhouses where we're going to be talking about weed identification, and we're grouping them by the time of initial emergence. And so Megan Anderson covered the early emergers, and I'm going to be talking about what we would call mid-emergers. And so the first one we're going to talk about is common sunflower. And it's not a real common weed, but there are some fields across the state. I think we get more of it as you move west in the state, where common sunflower is a real problem. It's one of the few native prairie species that does quite well in our crop fields. And so if we look at the sunflower, some people early on mistake it for cocklebur, which we'll talk about later. But the simplest way to differentiate seedling sunflower from cocklebur are the cotyledons. And so here we can see the relatively small oval-shaped cotyledons. So there might be, ½ inch, ¾ inch in length. The first leaves are sort of, again, oval, ovate. They're relatively pubescent, and they have an opposite leaf arrangement. So that's common sunflower. Now we're going to move to eastern black nightshade. And again, this weed's not nearly as common as it used to be, but some farmers still have it in their field. And it has relatively small cotyledons, again, sort of ovate in shape. The leaves are sort of nondescript, a little bit triangular in shape perhaps. As they get larger, the leaves will start getting irregular leaf margins. Wouldn't quite call them toothed, but they do have irregular jags. A good identification trait on the eastern black nightshade, and hopefully this shows it, is the undersides of the leaves oftentimes are very purple. Now, other weeds can do that, especially under cool conditions, but with eastern black nightshade, it's almost always going to have a very purple tinged leaf. Now we move on to cocklebur, and several key traits in identifying cocklebur. One are these large, people call them strap-shaped cotyledons, but they're very long and narrow, very fleshy. And again, if you remember the sunflower, the first true leaves of sunflower can be very similar in shape to the true leaves of cocklebur, but the sunflower has a small oval cotyledons, long strap-shaped cotyledons with the cocklebur. Another good trait is oftentimes on the stems, there will be very dark linear spots on the stems, and you'll almost always find those on cocklebur, and they are starting to show up here as they get a little bit more size. They become much more noticeable. And then finally, one of the easier weeds to identify early in the season is velvet leaf. And velvet leaf is one of those few plants where the cotyledons are very similar in shape to the true leaves. So the true leaves are heart-shaped, as are the cotyledons. And the leaves are covered with a really dense hair. At this stage, you might need a hand lens to see those hairs. And so that's one of the real benefits of carrying a hand lens with you, is when you're dealing with small weeds, it allows you to see some of the characteristics that can be hard to see with a naked eye. So those are 4 of the weeds that we find early in the growing season. These 4 species typically start to emerge right about when we get in the field to start planting. Whereas early emerging weeds like giant ragweed and common ragweed, they can start emerging 1 or 2 weeks ahead of normal planting. These start right about planting time. Then we have a group of weeds that we'll talk about next that emerge later in the season. You've put them in order already. I thought you were talking about the ones that you did.
Well, I did, and then I put